This is a main share meeting, and today it's with great pleasure and a lot of gratitude that I'm welcoming Lovey all the way from sunny Bermuda, who's come to share for up to 40 minutes. This is Lovey's second time sharing on the Sunday Sheffield as Bill sees it meeting, and we're delighted to have her with us. So with that, it's over to you, Lovey.
Oh my goodness, thank you so much, guys. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you happen to be on the globe. Guys, my name is Lovey Russo, and I'm alcoholic. And it's only by the grace of God and Alcoholics Anonymous that I'm live, sober, and recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. And what does that mean? That means I get to be useful in my life today. That means I get to suit up and show up and be the person that I was always supposed to be. It means that I'm not waking up or coming to hungover. It means that I'm not obsessing over my next drink, right? Am I cured of alcoholism? No, not even remotely a little bit. But what I do have is a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of my spiritual condition. So guys, before I go any further, I have to do this. I have a grand sponsor who insists, right, not to take myself so damn seriously. I'm just another bozo on the bus, and I get to do that today. I have a sobriety date. It's September the 7th of 2015. And in that very, very short amount of time, there's been no need or obsession to pick up a drink or a drug. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor who has a sponsor ad infinitum. And I sponsor sponsors. And guys, this one time I complained about a GSR meeting, and now I have a service sponsor. So I beg of you to be really careful what you complain to your sponsors about. I have a home group. I'm a home group member in good standing. My home group is known as the Main Purpose Group out of Milford, Connecticut. And Connecticut is a small state just outside of New York City. But due to the power of amends, I get to live on the beautiful island of Bermuda. And as you can probably see, I got way too much sun yesterday, despite slathering myself in like 70 SPF. My husband is like all bronzed and looking like an Adonis, and I look like a lobster. But guys, if you find yourself on my beautiful island and you want to go to a meeting, please, please, please let me know. I am more than happy to take you or to make arrangements for you to be taken to a meeting. And conversely, if you find yourself in New England, right, Connecticut, Massachusetts, that same invitation applies. Guys, what you're going to hear is 100% my experience, right? My truth, my reality, both in active alcoholism and in this program. I can only share with you my experience. I'm a fellow traveler on this journey, right? We do this shoulder to shoulder. And I do not profess to know anything, nothing about AA, the big book, or about God. So guys, when I first walked into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I was facing 16 years in federal prison. And in the meetings, I would hear people say, meeting makers make it, meeting makers make it, stick with the winners, don't drink one day at a time, go to meetings, right? And I was white knuckling it in early sobriety, right? So there was absolutely no relief. I wanted to drink so badly. And I had put props in my life to keep me from drinking, but that wasn't enough, right? And I was using willpower and resolve not to take that first drink. And I was absolutely miserable. So, 75, 80, 90 days into this very precarious sobriety, I heard a man at the back of the room share. And he told me that he had a threefold illness, right? He had a spiritual malady. He had a physical allergy to alcohol, and he had this really weird mental obsession, this peculiar mental twist that tells him it's okay to drink despite all the evidence to the contrary. And that got my attention, right? After the meeting, I asked him if we could talk. And, page 18 of our big book, for those of you that are new, this is our book, in italics, says something to the effect, but the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who's properly armed with the facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in about a few hours. So the ex-problem drinker, right? That would be the sober alcoholic. That would be you guys, right? Who has found this solution. Well, that would be the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That would be the directions and the spiritual awakening that is promised in this book. And so the solution, and then the threefold illness, right? That we have the spiritual malady, that there's this mental obsession, and there's this physical allergy. And finally, guys, there was someone who knew what was wrong with me, right? And had a solution. My first step was predicated on his 12th step, right? Supported by the group's fifth tradition. Now, I didn't know at that time that frequent contact with newcomers, right, and with each other would become the bright spot of my life. I didn't know that my drinking experience would make me uniquely useful to other alcoholics. I didn't know that to be helpful was our only aim, right? I didn't know that love and tolerance of others is our code, but he did, right? This person understood this program. He understood the singleness of purpose, stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And he took me through the steps, again, in this book, right? And he asked me certain questions like, can I stop drinking on my own and stay stopped? Or when I drink, can I stop at 3 drinks, right? Or can I stop at 2 drinks? Or do I continue to drink? And I answered yes to those questions. And he then qualified me as an alcoholic. Now, our third tradition, which we read, states that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Our program, Alcoholics Anonymous, is based on a common peril, alcoholism, right? And with a common solution through identification. I heard Kirsty speaking, before the meeting started, that this is about identification. Listen, identify, right? See what's similar, see what you can connect with. So anyone who wants to stop drinking is welcome in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. But this is the tradition 3, that is the ANDA, right? I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I'm an alcoholic and an overeater. I'm an alcoholic and a shopaholic. But out of respect for AA singleness of purpose, in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, I'm an alcoholic and nothing else. Those ANDAs are outside issues, right? And that's in tradition 10. Now, guys, I've attended outside meetings, right? Other fellowships. And the groups get quite militant if you identify yourself as an alcoholic, let's say in a Narcotics Anonymous meeting or in a Heroin Anonymous meeting. Why? Because they too are abiding by their singleness of purpose. See, guys, alcoholism for me is a life or death illness. If I'm diagnosed with breast cancer, I'm not going to seek the medical help of an orthopedist, right? I need an oncologist. Now, this orthopedist might be able to help in some small way, but the treatment I need lays elsewhere. If I have a plumbing leak in my house, I'm not going to call a stonemason, right? I'm going to call a plumber, someone who has experience in leaky pipes. If I'm catering for 50 people, I'm not going to call a florist, right? I need to call the right people. And if I'm an alcoholic, as we've just described, with a spiritual malady, right, with a physical allergy and with that mental obsession, I need other alcoholics. I need the big book. I need the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, my sponsor taught me that identification of the problem is paramount, right? I have no experience with non-conference deprived dry goods. I once made the mistake of agreeing to sponsor someone with a heroin addiction, and it did not work out for either one of us. Why? Because I couldn't identify with her and she couldn't identify with me. Right? I was of absolutely no use to this woman. She needed a different fellowship. See, I have and do sponsor people who are both alcoholic and something else. However, I can only address the problem of alcoholism. That's it. That's all, because that's where my experience lies. Now, guys, none of this would have been at all possible without Tradition 5, right? We just read it, right? You see, my sponsor was a member of a home group. And Tradition 5 says that each Alcoholics Anonymous group ought to be a spiritual entity having but one primary purpose, that of carrying its message to the alcoholic who still suffers. That's the long form. And, the message, its message, whose message? Well, the group's message, right? That home group had a primary purpose. That purpose was sharing the first 164 pages of the big book with the still sick and suffering alcoholic. And their mandate was to provide a meeting space for both groups and individuals. They provided big books and well-prepared big book sponsors so that those sponsors could head out to the most sordid places on earth and find people like me. Why? Because they too understood that King Alcohol had made me a slave, and I was beset by the 4 horsemen, right? The 4 horsemen of chronic alcoholism: terror, despair, frustration, and bewilderment. So guys, I'm going to ask you, what's your home group singleness of purpose? What is your group's message? How is it manifested? For some groups, it's a celebration of milestones, right? With coins. Every day they celebrate coins, from 24 hours to monthly coins to yearly coins up to infinity and beyond. For other groups, it's outreach, right? Taking meetings into prisons, into rehabs, into detoxes, out on the streets. I just got out of my morning meeting, and my morning meetings message is literature based, right? Every day we study a different AA approved book. Many meetings, their primary purpose is speaker based, right? So that the message of identification comes through to the newcomer. So I'm new in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I meet this man. My sponsor is a male. My husband absolutely 100% approves. And I followed all of my sponsor's suggestions. Okay, let's who's kidding who, right? They really weren't suggestions, but subtle requirements, right? All based on the big book. Okay, let me rephrase. They weren't at all subtle. There was nothing subtle about my sponsor, right? My first higher power, guys, was the gift of desperation, right? G-O-D, the gift of desperation. I'm out on that metaphorical ocean, and it's storming, and it's dark, and waves are crashing over my head, and I'm drowning, right? The book talks about the desperation of that drowning man. And you guys show up in a life raft, and you throw me a line, and I grab onto it, and you pull me into safety. And at that point, I don't have another choice, right? I am out of options. Nothing I can do will ever get me a point where I can recover on my own. But guys, if it was a really beautiful day in Bermuda like it is now, right? I went to the beach yesterday and I could see the beautiful white sand underneath the water, right? And if I could touch ground and you guys showed up, with that same life raft and threw me a line, you know what? I'm going to say, well, you know what? That life preserver is kind of moldy. It's got barnacles on it. It's not very pretty. Come back when you have a really pretty magenta one, right? Because I still think that I have options at that point, right? I think I have options. Then my next higher power became a group of drunks, right? Another G-O-D. I'm watching you guys sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? Laughing, enjoying life, saying things like, we are not a glum lot, and we absolutely insist on enjoying life, right? You say things like, I'm a grateful alcoholic. And and then I start to hear how, your marriages are being saved, and how custody of children has been resolved. And I hear how, government debts have been paid off, and how felony charges have been expunged, right? And then my next higher power is good, orderly direction. I do what you guys tell me to do. You said, Lovey, get a sponsor, someone who has experience in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous from this book, because this is where the directions are. They exist nowhere else, right? Here, this is where the directions are, and do the work. You say, Lovey, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, right? Do the next right thing, right? Wear the world as a loose garment. Help the next sick and suffering alcoholic. See that new woman over there? Go over there and take her number. Call her. Take her out for coffee. See all those chairs? Start stacking them up, right? They started giving me responsibility. And guys, finally, as a result of working all these steps, I had a spiritual awakening, and I was able to develop an intimate and vertical relationship with this higher power. Now, guys, I will tell you, it wasn't that bright white moment like the, right? That was not my experience. It was of the educational variety, and it continues to grow as I nurture and cultivate. Now, in Appendix 2, the book talks about, a vast change in feeling and outlook. And quite often, friends of the newcomer are aware of these differences long before he is himself. See, guys, I don't know, like, I like to think of this like weight loss, right? See, guys, I don't notice the first 5 pounds. We're in the UK, so kilos or stone. I don't even remotely admit to knowing what stone is. But anyway, let's just deal with kilos. But you guys do, and you say things like, hey, Lovey, did you change your hair? Something looks different, right? But no one's exactly sure what it is. So the next 10 kilos come off, and you guys ask, hey, are you losing weight? We can see it in your face. Yet I still don't see it, right? Slowly but surely, I start to see what you guys see. And I begin to notice that my clothes are too big. It's easier to climb the stairs, right? My thighs don't chafe when I'm wearing a dress, right? I start to feel better about myself. And I buy some new clothes, and I begin to see the difference. You see, weight loss isn't overnight, but a slow and steady progress. And that's the way it was with my spiritual awakening. So about 2 years or so into my sobriety, that first sponsor of mine was involved in a horrific traffic accident, and he suffered substantial brain trauma. And within 18 hours, I had to find a new sponsor. Why? Because I knew my first sponsor wasn't going to be the same, right? This was a significant injury. And out of respect for that sponsor, I had no choice, right? I had to honor him by getting somebody new. See, because he always told me that my best thinking got me into trouble and that I needed constant, daily adult supervision, right? So using him as an example, I called up someone whom I admired and someone who had loved this program. And I heard this person speak and I resonated with that message. And I asked if we could meet. I said, hey, I'll take you out for dinner. And I asked if he might be a temporary sponsor. And he looked at me dead in the face and said, do you want temporary sobriety? Right? So I explained to him that, the first sponsor was in the hospital, traumatic brain injury. And this sponsor said to me, you know what? I'm a one-trick pony, right? So it's me or nobody. So I said, all right, you're it, right? So now I've got a new sponsor. And this sponsor is very, very different than, so I now have a new sponsor from that sponsor. So this current sponsor is very, very, very different from the first and the second sponsor, right? But guys, you know what? They're nearly identical in the way they live their program. Why? Because there is a solution. There's only one program, guys. It's here, right? It isn't Lovey's program. It's not Jim's program. It's not Young's program, right? There's one program and it's called the 12 Steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it baffles my mind, right? To be a member of a 12-step program and not do all 12 steps, right? See, guys, we as a society, right? Alcoholics Anonymous can't afford to dilute our message or our singleness of purpose. This is not cafeteria style recovery, right? Picking and choosing what I want to do and what I not want to do. You see, guys, who you have as a football coach or soccer coach or whatever we call it, when you're 5, right? When you're 5 years old, it's not who you're going to have as a coach when you're playing the Premier League, right? Unless, of course, you're the kid of a footballer, right? But my point is that sponsors come and go in our life, right? And I need to keep feeding my spiritual development with like-minded people. Every sponsor provides a new experience and a new perspective and a new understanding of God. And my my illness keeps growing like this, right? So I need my spirituality to stay 2 or 3 steps ahead of my illness. And I need a sponsor who is always going to challenge me to have that relationship with God. Now, my sponsors, right, are extreme examples of folks with a solution and a knowledge of the big book and present themselves to newcomers, right? All 3 of my sponsors, we've always had different beliefs, different political leanings, different general views. But remember that 10th tradition, right? Those are outside issues. That is not at all relevant at all to my recovery. And why is that important? Because these sponsors have demonstrated in their actions, right, what it's like to be really, truly sober, right? It's one thing to talk the talk. It's another thing to actually walk the walk. And I often tell people, if you really want to know how I'm doing or what I'm doing, look at my feet, right? What actions am I taking? See, for me, AA stands for action and accountability. Guys, I don't get struck sober just sitting in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? There's work that I have to do. I get sober by taking the action that's outlined in this book, right? AA for me isn't for people who need it or want it, but for people who do it. I gotta do the work. So page 89 in our book. Let me read it because I'm going to screw it up otherwise. So page 89 says, practical experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. It works when other suggestions fail, right? Carry this message to other alcoholics. You can help when no one else can. You can secure their confidence when others fail. Remember, they are very ill. life will take on new meaning, to watch people recover, to see them help others, to watch loneliness vanish, to see a fellowship grow up about you, to have a host of friends. This is an experience you must not miss, right? Guys, so my sponsor taught me to go to God in absolutely everything all the time. You see, my sponsor is patient and kind. He truly is the type of sponsor that I want to emulate. 8 years ago, his brother died of an overdose. And what did he do? He first went straight to God. So when my dad died, I went straight to God. And I told this God of my understanding that I didn't hate him and that my relationship with him didn't change, and to give me the strength to be the person that this higher power wanted me to be. Then I called my sponsor, and then I called my husband. You see, guys, because of this program, because of good sponsorship, because of singleness of purpose, I was able to show up and be a responsible daughter. I was able to help my aging mother and to help my sisters. I was able to be helpful and useful and of service, right? And I was able to cover my father's final expenses because I wasn't drinking away all my money, right? Because I had become fiscally responsible. See, guys, if I had been drinking, I would have been too drunk to make it off this island to go home and be of service. Now, our 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all of our affairs. For me, and only for me, step 12 is a 3-part step. The first part is a promise, right? If I do the first 11 steps, I am promised, I am guaranteed a spiritual awakening. The first 11 steps for me are the directions for finding a God of my understanding. Now, there are conditions, right? The book is filled with conditions. I got to be thoroughly honest. Guys, I'm an alcoholic. I can lie at the drop of a hat for no reason whatsoever. It says there are no half measures. I can half-ass anything. And I need to be fearless. And the book tells me I'm driven by 100 forms of fear. But if I'm willing to do the work as outlined in this book, I am guaranteed a spiritual awakening. Sandy Beach once said that the steps were the treasure maps for finding God, right? I'm not sober just not to drink one day at a time. I'm sober to fill my life with this power, right? Because what I had was a spiritual malady, was really just a giant God-sized hole in the middle of my heart. And now that is complete, right? That's filled. The second part of step 12 is to carry this message to alcoholics. This message, right? Again, back to this message. The message for me is found on the foreword to the first edition of the big book. It says, we of Alcoholics Anonymous are more than 100 men and women who have recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. To show other alcoholics precisely how we have recovered is the main purpose of this book. Again, there's another singleness of purpose, right? There is no wiggle room whatsoever in the word precisely. All right? No wiggle room. So guys, I don't have one here, but let's just imagine for a minute that you all have a Betty Crocker cake mix. Okay, it's all exactly the same kind. Let's say it's a white cake. And I give you the challenge of everybody baking that cake and bring it in later, and we're all going to have a taste test. Right? So if I want the cake that is pictured on the front of that box, right, I got to follow the directions on the back of the box. Exactly. But see, guys, I'm on a diet, and I think a cup of oil is way too much. So I substitute it with applesauce. All right. Some of you may have high cholesterol. So instead of using real eggs, you use some kind of egg replacement. Maybe white cake was all that was available. And what I really, really, really want is chocolate. So, I throw in a handful of chocolate chips. Maybe I like a more fudge-like cake and not bake it for the exact length of time or not at the specified temperature. And in the end, I sort of kind of get something like a cake, but it's not the cake that's advertised on the front of the box, right? So guys, if I want what the first 100 who got and stayed sober had, right, I need to do what they did. And that means following their examples and their directions as laid out in this book, right? And if we look at page 59 of the book, our steps are read in the past tense. Why? Because that's what they did, right? They came to believe, they admitted, they made a list, right? So if I want that, I've got to do that too. And all of the steps are in the present, right? If we look at step 2, are you now, oh my God, I'm just going blank with it. But it's like, Anyway, it'll come to me. But anyway, sorry about that. So the big book uses the word approach 28 times. See, guys, I have a responsibility as a sober member of Alcoholics Anonymous to go out and find the newcomer, right? My sponsor went out looking for someone like me, right? So I go to wind-up joints, the places I wind up if I drink again, right? Jails, rehabs, detoxes. I go to beginner meetings and regularly seek out fishing spots, right? Places where I knew newcomers are hanging out. And I have a responsibility to watch for the newcomer in meetings. I watch for that face I don't recognize. And I'll go up to them and say, hi, my name is Lovey. Are you new? Yes. Welcome, right? Here's the coffee. Here are the donuts. Here are the bathrooms. Here's a meeting schedule. Here's a big book. Please come and sit beside me. Let me introduce you to some people. Would you like to go for dinner or coffee after the meeting and talk? Another new face. Hi, are you new? No, I'm just visiting, especially in Bermuda, right? Welcome. My name is Lovey. Here's the coffee. Here are the scones because we don't donut in Bermuda. Here are the bathrooms. Here's a meeting schedule. Here are the meetings closest to your hotel. How can I be helpful to you? What can I do for you while you are visiting our beautiful, beautiful island? Another new face. Hi, are you new? No. I got 30 years of resentment on a coffee pot and I'm here to create chaos. Welcome. My name is Lovey, right? Here's the coffee, here are the donuts, here are the bathrooms. Here's a brand new minted schedule, right? Here is the AA or the intergroup web address, right? Here's a 4th edition book, just in case you're still working from the 3rd. Please come and sit beside me. Let me introduce you to some people. You see, guys, I get to do that today, right? I sponsor a lot of people. I sponsor both men and women because I sponsor alcoholics, regardless of gender, religion, creed, nationality. I sponsor drunks. And people often ask me how many people I sponsor. And I always say one less than I need. So in my little sponsorship group, we just recently finished a 21-day big book challenge. And I tasked, suggested, encouraged people to read 10 pages at a time. You know, we kind of had a set schedule, what pages we were going to read, and then reflect upon it. And I was reading the same pages every day, 3 times a day. Why? Because, guys, not everybody can read. Not everyone has the same level of comprehension, education, or intellectual capacity. I read the book to them. See, I get to do that because in my mind, everyone, absolutely everyone deserves the same chance at recovery, regardless of their personal limitations. And I got to remember that as a result of the 3rd step, I am out of management, right? I'm out of management. My only job is to love God's kids where they happen to be on their journey without judgment or opinion. Without judgment or opinion. That's not always an easy task, right? But I try to do it to the best of my ability. Now, the 3rd part of step 12 is to practice these principles in all of our affairs. All of my affairs, right? It's how I behave when I'm on the M1 and it's, you know, the middle of commute traffic. It's how I behave when I'm standing in the grocery store behind a little old lady paying in coupons and pennies and there was someplace that I needed to be 30 minutes ago. It's how I behave when I'm in Heathrow Airport, when you know, when the tube has gone on strike or you know, when all sorts of crazy things are happening, right? And these principles are spiritual in nature. And this is the challenge in my life, right? I try to employ things like compassion, patience, forgiveness, goodwill, humility, honesty, fidelity, consideration, restitution, acceptance. You see, today, guys, I get to be a producer of harmony rather than confusion. See, I no longer want to live in conflict or hate. Life is way too short and way too precious. Now, I know our book uses this phrase, love and tolerance of others is our code. For me, the word tolerance comes from a place of spiritual hubris, right? That I'm just putting up with you and your nonsense. That's dangerous for someone like me. I need to be compassionate. Compassion embodies love and patience, right? Again, I'm going to reiterate, I get to love people with compassion, patience, connection, and empathy without judgment or opinion. So I mentioned restitution. And restitution is a really huge spiritual principle in my life. And restitution Someone just said intuition. Absolutely, intuition. Restitution follows the 9-step amends. Now, I had to make an amends to a government agency here in the United States, and I'd been putting it off for a long time. And I called my attorney and suggested to him what my sponsor had wanted me to do. My sponsor wanted me to make these amends. And my attorney says, hell no, are you crazy? We worked so hard to keep you out of jail and you want to go do what? Guys, I am now vindicated, smugly superior. And I go back to my sponsor and I go, hey there, sponsor. This is what my attorney wants me to do. And my sponsor looks at me like only a sponsor can, right? Pats me on my head and says, oh, is that right? How free do you want to be? Get on your knees and pray for the willingness to be willing. So what did I do? I followed my sponsor's subtle suggestions and I made an appointment with this particular agency. And I took my attorney and my union rep and I stood before this panel and I told them that I was a sober woman in Alcoholics Anonymous and that my sobriety was predicated on making right the wrongs of my past. And I wasn't there to beg for my job back or to have my license reinstated. I was only there with the intention of doing the next right thing, right? And I would accept any judgment, any decision that they would have made. Guys, I could have been arrested and remanded to custody on the spot. And I was prepared to go to jail, right? I had written letters to my children on the events of their marriage or their weddings and the births of their first children. This amends was made years ago in the month of May, and I had purchased Christmas gifts and I had wrapped them and I had written out my Christmas cards and already had them stamped because I was absolutely positive that I was going to jail. But here's God working in my life. A man on that panel said, I too am a sober man in Alcoholics Anonymous, and I know exactly what you're trying to do. He said, this is what we want you to do. Never drink again, one day at a time, and help share what alcoholism is and what it isn't in the community, and help others to find recovery. You see, guys, I now understand that my job is to be of maximum helpfulness to God and to others, right? I never hesitate to go anywhere if I can be helpful, right? I'm on the firing line, not stuck somewhere in the middle of AA. You see, as long as my motives are helpful and useful to God, God will keep me safe and protected, right? In that state of neutrality, right? The 10-step promises where I'm in a state of neutrality, safe and protected, right? I'm running out of time, but anyway, guys, page 100 says, both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to us when we put ourselves in God's hands were better than anything we could have planned. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new and wonderful world, no matter what your present circumstances, right? And guys, when I do that, absolutely amazing things happen in my life. So here is the step 2 question, right? The one that I badly bundled. On page 47, it says, we needed to ask ourselves but one short question. Do I now believe, or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself, right? See, those are in the present tense because that's the question that I need to ask myself. Whereas on page 59, everything is written in the past because that's what the first 100 did, right? So when it says we of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? That's not you and me. That's the first 100 who got and stayed sober. And if I want what they have, I got to do what they do. So if you're new or nearly new, right? Lydia was on. Please, Lydia, get a sponsor, someone who has experience in this book, right? Tom, this book, because this is where the recovery comes from. And guys, if you are a veteran of this program, please, I beg you, I implore you, I beseech you, reach out your hand to a newcomer and show them that this program works. And if you will just give me one more minute, I'd like to close with page 164 in the book. And it says, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we know only a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if, only if, your own house is in order. but obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and for countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Guys, thank you so much for allowing me to participate in my sobriety today. And thank you for reminding me of singleness of purpose. Thanks, guys. I think that's all I have.